It was a Tuesday night, which should have been my first warning. Nothing good ever happens on a Tuesday. I was lying on our big bed when I heard the shower start again. This was Marissa's second shower of the day, which felt strange since she was never the type to care much about being squeaky clean. She was more of a shower every other day, unless I have plans kind of woman. So 2 showers in one day was worth noting. The water was still running when I saw her handbag on the chair near our dresser, looking like it had burst open. The zipper was undone, and half the stuff had spilled across the floor. Lip gloss, receipts, hair ties, and what looked like half a pharmacy's travel section spread across the wood floor. I'm not the type to dig through my wife's purse. That's a marriage sin right up there with leaving the toilet seat up or forgetting an anniversary. But the mess bugged me. So I thought I'd be the nice husband and clean it before she came out and stress cleaned at midnight, like she sometimes did when work got rough. So there I was playing the good guy, picking up tampons and mints and wondering why women need 17 lipsticks that all look the same. That's when my hand brushed against something that didn't fit in with the usual purse junk. It was small, cool, and smooth metal, expensive and sharp in design. I pulled it out and held it to the lamp. A silver tube about 4 inches long, with a sleek, simple look, like something Apple would make if they sold lube. The body was covered in Japanese writing, black against silver. It looked pricey, the kind of thing you don't just grab at CVS while buying milk. My first thought was medical. Maybe she had some issues she didn't want to talk about. Women's health can be tricky, and Marissa hated talking about things that made her uneasy. But then I thought, if it was medical, why was it Japanese? And why hadn't she told me? Curiosity won. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera, and scanned the text. Google Translate came to the rescue while I sat there at 11:30 questioning my marriage. The screen lit up with the translation, and I swear I felt my blood turn cold. Premium men's personal lubricant, long-lasting formula, men's lubricant, not women's, not couples, men's. And it wasn't new. The tube was about half empty with that used look from regular handling. I turned it over in my hands, my brain trying to catch up while my guts screamed what I didn't want to hear. My wife had never bought anything like this for us. We barely used lube at all, and when we did, it was the cheap pharmacy kind, in a plain bottle. This one looked like it cost more than our grocery run, and it sure wasn't meant for us. The shower was still humming, but something had shifted in the silence between those water drops. My marriage was fracturing, and I could feel every crack spreading through 15 years of what I thought was trust. Let me rewind the reel of our life for you. 15 years, one mortgage, a son who thinks the world is safe because we told him so. Marissa's career had taken off like a rocket ship in the last 3 years. Marketing director at a firm downtown, all power suits and client dinners. My job was steady but quiet. Engineering consulting, good money, predictable hours. We'd built what looked like the perfect suburban dream. But now, sitting there with that silver tube in my hands, all those routines suddenly felt like stage props. Her early meetings that started getting earlier, girls' nights that stretched later, those marathon office sprints that kept her out past midnight. I'd been the supportive husband, making dinner for one, putting our boy to bed alone, never questioning because I trusted her. Trust, that's what we'd built everything on, like some family heirloom passed down through generations of happy marriages. Marissa had always been the social one, the one with the charm and the connections, the one who could walk into any room and own it within 5 minutes. I was her quiet anchor, the steady guy who remembered anniversaries and fixed the leaky faucet and never made waves. She used to joke that I was too good for my own good, too trusting, used to say it like it was endearing. Now I wondered if she'd been taking notes on exactly how far that trust could stretch. The power dynamic had always been clear. She was the star, I was the support system. She brought home the exciting stories and the office drama. I brought home the stability and the health insurance. It worked, or at least I thought it did. But trust isn't just about believing someone when they tell you they love you. It's about believing them when they tell you they're working late, when they say they're too tired, when they explain away the little inconsistencies that your gut keeps cataloging. You don't realize trust is cracked until it cuts you. And right then, holding that tube while listening to my wife hum in the shower like she didn't have a care in the world, I felt every sharp edge of 15 years of blind loyalty slicing through my chest. The woman I'd built my entire adult life around had been living a double life, and I'd been too generous, too trusting, too good for my own good to see it. But I was about to learn exactly how much those generous assumptions had cost me, and that education was just getting started. I kept staring at the tube, then my eyes slid to her tablet on the desk. The screen was still on, glowing. She'd left it open after working on slides earlier. The home screen showed all her neat little app folders with cute names like Fun Stuff, Work Tools, and Groceries. Wait, groceries. I had never once seen Marissa use a grocery app. This was the same woman who made me drive to 3 stores just to get the right brand of pasta sauce. And now she had a grocery folder on her tablet. That was like finding out your vegan friend had a stash of burgers in the freezer. My hands shook as I tapped the folder. Inside was only one app I didn't recognize, some kind of chat platform with a plain, boring icon. My thumb hovered over it forever, or maybe just half a minute. This was it. Either I was crazy or my whole life was about to come apart. I opened it. The chat loaded, and right at the top was a thread with someone named Leo. The profile pic was just a shadow. But the words, oh God, the words. Can't wait to see you Thursday. Got us the usual room at the Marriott. Bring that stuff I like, the silver one. Makes it so much better. Going to do things to you your husband never could. I scrolled up. My sight blurred as weeks of messages filled the screen. Hotel rooms described in detail. Photos I wished I hadn't seen. Mentions of that same silver tube I was holding in my sweaty hand. The dates hit me like a hammer. Every late night at the office, every girl's night out, every too tired tonight, honey. All of it, lies stacked on top of lies, a tower of deception that reached back months. The messages had a casual intimacy that was worse than passion. Inside jokes about our spot and the usual time, references to my work schedule, my travel days, even mentions of our son's sleepovers. They'd been planning around my life like I was some obstacle to navigate around, planning their betrayal with the same attention to detail most people use for vacation itineraries. There were receipts attached to some messages, hotel charges, dinner bills, even what looked like shopping trips for lingerie I'd never seen. She'd been living an entire parallel life, funded by our joint account, scheduled around our family calendar, documented in a chat thread hidden behind a fake grocery app icon. The water was still running, but the humming had stopped. In that silence, I realized something fundamental had changed inside me. The man who'd walked into this bedroom an hour ago, the trusting husband, the generous fool, he was gone. What sat there now, scrolling through his wife's betrayal while she washed off the evidence of God knows what, was someone harder, someone who'd stopped begging for answers and started planning outcomes. Groceries don't text back with hotel bookings and promises of things I could never provide, but they sure as hell document everything when you're stupid enough to keep them in plain sight. The shower finally stopped. I'd just finished screenshotting everything when I heard the bathroom door open. The sound of bare feet padding across our hardwood floors made my heart race, but not in the romantic way it used to. More like the, I'm about to watch my life implode in real time way. Marissa walked out of the bathroom like she was in a shampoo ad, wrapped in that soft white towel I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years back. Hey, babe, she said, her voice dripping with that fake sweet tone women use when they're hiding something. You look tired. She padded to the kitchen, then came back with a tall glass of milk, holding it out like a peace offering. Here, drink this. It'll help you sleep. Don't you have that early meeting tomorrow? And there it was. The early meeting. The one I'd only mentioned at dinner. The one she'd tucked away in her lying little brain as the perfect cover for another secret night out. Because nothing says loyal wife like sedating your husband so you can sneak off for fun with someone else. I took the glass, watching her face in the low light. She looked so caring, so worried about me getting rest. The same expression she'd probably worn while typing messages to Leo about hotel rooms and silver tubes. Thanks, honey, I said, taking a small sip. I pretended to drink half, then set it down on the nightstand with a smile. You're the best. I love you. The words burned in my mouth, but her face lit up like it was real love. That was the worst part. Not just that she was cheating, but that she could look me in the eye with so much warmth while planning to run off to some hotel with a guy named Leo. The sweetness was a lullaby with thorns, milk on a tray, a concerned smile, the perfect setup for another midnight exit. The next hour was probably the longest 60 minutes of my life. I lay there listening to her breathing, waiting for it to settle into that deep, even rhythm that meant she thought I was out cold. Every few minutes, I'd let out a little snore or shift positions, really selling the whole heavily sedated husband performance. She was good, I'll give her that. She waited a full hour before making her move, probably making sure whatever she'd slipped me had enough time to kick in. I felt the mattress shift as she carefully climbed out of bed, moving with the stealth of someone who'd done this dance before. At exactly 12:45 a.m., I heard the soft click of our front door opening, then the faint sound of voices in the hallway outside our apartment. My heart was pounding so loud, I was sure the neighbors could hear it through the walls. I gave her exactly 20 seconds, long enough to think she was in the clear, but not long enough for them to disappear entirely. Then I slipped out of bed, grabbed my robe, and crept toward the door like some kind of suburban ninja. The hallway was dimly lit, but I could see them at the far end, near the elevator. Marissa was pressed against the wall, and some tall guy had his hands on either side of her face, kissing her like she was the last woman on earth. Even from a distance, I could see he was everything I wasn't. Tall, muscular, probably 10 years younger than me. So this was Leo. This was the man my wife thought was worth throwing away 15 years of marriage for. Something inside me stopped begging for answers and started planning outcomes. In that elevator's dim light, watching my wife disappear with another man, the last piece of my generous heart finally went dark. They were heading up to the 4th floor, and what I discovered next would change everything. Because sometimes, the ace you don't know you're holding is the one that wins the game. Here's what Marissa didn't know about her trusting, generous husband. 6 months ago, after the Hendersons got robbed 2 streets over, I'd quietly installed a comprehensive home security system. Cameras, motion sensors, door alerts, all of it synced to an app on my phone and backed up to cloud storage. She'd signed the consent forms without reading them, trusting me to handle the technical stuff. Legal, logged, and time-stamped. Every entry, every exit, every midnight departure had been recorded in high definition. But that wasn't my only insurance policy. 2 years ago, when we'd bought the house, Marissa had insisted on a prenup. Just in case, she'd said with a laugh. Not that we'll ever need it. The agreement included a fidelity clause with very specific consequences for adultery. She'd insisted it would never matter because we loved each other too much to ever betray that trust. I'd signed because I trusted her judgment. Funny how trust works both ways until it doesn't. 3 months ago, when small discrepancies started appearing in our joint account, I'd quietly digitized every financial record, bank statements, credit card bills, hotel charges, restaurant receipts, all of it organized in neat folders with dates and locations. I'd told myself I was just being thorough, but my gut had been keeping a ledger even when my heart wanted to stay generous. The next morning, I called my old college roommate Jake, who'd become a family attorney. Over coffee, I laid out the situation without naming names. Hypothetically, I said, if someone discovered their spouse was having an affair, and there was documented evidence, and there was a prenup with infidelity clauses, what would be the smartest way to proceed? Jake leaned back in his chair, studying my face. Hypothetically, someone in that situation would want to protect their assets and their children first. Document everything. Don't make any accusations until you have ironclad proof. And whatever you do, don't let emotions drive the strategy. The goal isn't revenge, it's justice. And justice works best when it's methodical. I also reached out to Dr. Sarah Chen, our son's pediatrician and a family friend. Over lunch, I asked her about custody considerations in difficult divorces. The courts always prioritize the child's stability and safety, she said. Documentation is key. School records, medical records, proof of who's been the primary caregiver. If there are concerns about a parent's lifestyle or decision-making, having a paper trail makes all the difference. By the time I walked home that afternoon, I had a blueprint. Not for revenge. Revenge is messy and emotional. This was about accountability, about making sure that 15 years of marriage meant something, even if it was ending. About protecting my son from the chaos his mother was about to unleash on our family. I wasn't out for blood. I was out for truth with teeth. And I just discovered I was holding all the right cards to make sure that truth had consequences. The woman who'd built her betrayal on my trust was about to learn that trust, once broken, becomes evidence. Over the next week, I became a man with a mission. No rage, only rhythm. Every action calculated, every step documented. I started with the security footage, exporting clips of every midnight departure, every secret return. The timestamps told a story that would be impossible to dispute in any courtroom. I mirrored her calendar, cross-referencing her late meetings, and client dinners with the hotel receipts I'd found in the chat logs. Amazing how many business emergencies coincided with Leo's available evenings. I pulled the hotel receipts, matched them with our credit card statements, and discovered she'd been charging our joint account for rooms she was sharing with another man. Next came the digital evidence. I exported every message from the chat app, organized them chronologically, and created a timeline that showed the progression of their affair. Screenshots, conversation threads, even the photos I couldn't unsee. All of it saved to multiple cloud accounts with timestamps and metadata intact. I secured our financial accounts, moving funds according to the prenup's specific provisions. The document she'd signed 2 years ago wasn't just a formality. It was a contract with very clear terms about asset division in cases of proven infidelity. Every dollar that remained in our joint account after this discovery would be subject to those terms. The confrontation had to be perfect. Not some emotional explosion in our bedroom at midnight, but a controlled environment where lies couldn't survive and spin wouldn't stick. I arranged for a meeting with our attorney, a mediator, and HR from her company, because what I'd discovered wasn't just an affair. It was a pattern of using company resources for personal betrayal. I rehearsed the presentation like I was pitching to the most important client of my life. A printed timeline of every message, matched hotel keycards I'd recovered from her purse, and a short video compilation of security footage with dates burned into the corner like a brand. Every piece of evidence was legal, verifiable, and devastating. The venue would be a conference room at Jake's law office, neutral ground where emotions couldn't overwhelm facts, where her charm and social skills would mean nothing against documented proof. I wasn't planning to destroy her. I was planning to let her own choices speak for themselves. Every step was safe, legal, and surgical. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability, about making sure that when the dust settled, our son would know his father had fought for truth, not out of anger, but out of love for what our family could have been. The woman who'd weaponized my trust was about to discover that trust, when properly documented, becomes the most powerful evidence of all. The conference room smelled like coffee and consequences. Jake had arranged everything perfectly. Round table, neutral lighting, recording equipment for legal purposes, and enough chairs for what felt like a small tribunal. When Marissa walked in at exactly 10 a.m., she still thought this was about couples counseling. Her expression was that perfect mix of concern and confusion she'd mastered over 15 years of marriage. "I thought we could work through whatever's been bothering you," she said, settling into her chair with that graceful confidence that had charmed me for so many years. "I know work has been stressful, and maybe I haven't been as attentive as I should be." I slid the first folder across the table. "Let's talk about Leo." Her face didn't change immediately. The mask held for about 3 seconds, that perfect poker face she'd worn through months of lies. Then I saw the flicker, just a tiny crack around her eyes, like someone had dropped a stone into still water. "I don't know what you mean," she said, but her voice had lost that warm confidence. I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. The chat messages filled the screen. Months of conversations with timestamps and dates. Her face went white as she read her own words back to herself. Messages about hotel room, about the silver tube, about things she was going to do that her husband could never provide. "Page 1 covers the last 3 months of documented infidelity," I said, keeping my voice level. "Page 2 matches your hotel receipts to our joint credit card statement. Page 3 is a timeline of your location data, cross-referenced with security footage from our building." The mediator slid the prenup forward. "Mrs. Thompson, you might want to review Section 12, subsection C, regarding asset division in cases of proven adultery." That's when her attorney, the one she'd hurriedly called that morning, started flipping through documents with increasingly desperate speed. The fidelity clause she'd insisted on 2 years ago was ironclad. Every asset, every account, every investment we'd built together had specific provision for exactly this situation. But I wasn't done. The security footage came next, projected on the wall like a home movie from hell. Marissa leaving at midnight, returning at dawn, the elevator kisses, the walks of shame, all of it timestamped, all of it undeniable. "The company credit card receipts are particularly interesting," Jake added, spreading another set of documents across the table. "Hotel rooms charged to business accounts for personal use. That's embezzlement, Mrs. Thompson. HR is already conducting their own investigation." Her lawyer leaned over and whispered something in her ear. Whatever he said made her face crumble completely. The mask finally fell away, revealing something desperate and cornered underneath. "You don't understand," she said, her voice cracking. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Leo and I, it was just supposed to be fun. It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone." But I'd moved past hurt months ago. This was about consequences now, about making sure that 15 years of marriage meant something, even if it was ending, about showing our son that trust matters, that promises have weight, that people are accountable for their choices. The papers were signed by noon. Custody, assets, everything divided according to the contract she'd insisted we'd never need. It wasn't revenge, it was gravity, finally doing its job. 6 months later, I stood in our kitchen, my kitchen now, watching the morning sun stream through windows that no longer reflected lies. The house felt different without the weight of secrets pressing down on every conversation. Cleaner somehow, like I'd finally opened windows that had been painted shut for years. Our son adjusted better than I'd expected. Kids are resilient in ways that constantly surprise adults. I'd told him a version of the truth that was age-safe and dignity-strong. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt the people they love, and when that happens, families have to change shape to stay healthy. He understood more than I gave him credit for, but he also understood that his world was still safe, just different. Marissa had moved to a small apartment across town. The network investigation had resulted in plea deals and suspended sentences, but her career was over. The viral video of her and Leo's ambulance ride had made her unemployable in our industry. She saw our son every other weekend, when she could manage it between the part-time jobs she'd cobbled together. Leo had disappeared entirely after his gym fired him and his social media following evaporated. Turns out relationship coaches who end up superglued to married women don't maintain their credibility for long. Last I heard, he'd moved back in with his parents in another state. I'd started dating again, carefully, a woman named Claire from the engineering firm down the street. She appreciated honesty, had been through her own divorce, and understood that trust isn't something you give away easily once you've learned what it costs. We took things slow, built on friendship first, and never pretended that love was the same thing as blind faith. In the evening, after homework was done and dishes were washed, I'd sometimes think about those months when I'd been living in a lie without knowing it. How much energy I'd spent being generous with someone who was weaponizing that generosity against me. How many nights I'd slept alone thinking I was just giving my wife space to decompress from work stress. But I don't dwell on the anger anymore. Anger is exhausting, and I'd wasted enough energy on a marriage that had died long before I found that silver tube. What I focus on now is the lesson. Trust isn't a leap of faith, it's a ledger. Love isn't blind, just generous. And when generosity is abused, consequences aren't cruel. They're mercy in disguise. The final shot of this story isn't dramatic. It's just me, locking the door from the inside at the end of another honest day. No more midnight departures to track, no more lies to decode, no more silver tubes hiding in purses. Just the simple satisfaction of a life built on truth, even when that truth had to be excavated from years of careful deception. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just refusing to let someone else's choices define your worth. And sometime, when you're brave enough to demand the truth, you discover you're strong enough to build something better on the ruins of what you thought you wanted to last forever. The woman who thought she could have it all learned that some choices cost everything. The man who thought trust was weakness learned that boundaries are love in action. And the boy who thought his world was ending learned that sometimes families have to break before they can heal into something stronger. That silver tube started this story, but it didn't finish it. What finished it was the choice to value myself enough to demand honesty, even when that honesty destroyed everything I thought I wanted. In the end, that choice gave me everything I actually needed: self-respect, my son's future, and a life where love doesn't require blindness to survive. Justice isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just the quiet satisfaction of knowing you fought for truth and won.